يتفضل دكتور روبرت، وما أتوقع إنه في زول حيحتاج ترجمة. ف
شكرا.
Dr. Robert, you can start, and
شكرا.
it's fine to talk in English. Everyone will understand.
أولا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، ورمضان كريم. إن شاء الله كلكم بخير في هذا الوقت الخطيرة بسبب الكورونا فيروس، وإن شاء الله كلكم عندكم الفاكسين، والمستقبل يعني يكون أحسن من هذا السنة.
You are very welcome. And
Thank you very much.
if you would like to talk in Arabic, that's fine. If you will talk in English, that's fine too. Whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Or if you want to hybrid your talk.
نوس نوس. كما قلت الأخ حديث، لما كنت في السودان وعشت في السودان في سنة 86 و 87، يعني أنا حلمت بالعربي، يعني بالليل، وفكرت بالعربي، كل شيء كان يعني بالعربي، وكلمت عربي يعني 100%. لكن أنا طولت هنا في أمريكا، ولساني ثقيل من نقص الكلام.
بس ما شاء الله، يعني عربي كويس، ماشي كويس.
الله يسلمك، الله يسلمك، الله يسلمك، الله يخليك. وأنا هحاول أتكلم بالعربي وبالإنجليزي، يعني نص نص على حسب الكلام والموضوع.
تمام.
Thank you so much for inviting me. والله أنا شرفت إلى أقصى حد على هذا الدعوة الجميلة. I am very, very honored and pleased, and thank you so much. This is a great honor for me. You know, when I wrote the book, what I wanted was to uncover something of Sudan's history for the Sudanese people. And when the book was published in English, I was happy, of course, طبعاً, but I really wanted the book to be بالعربي so that the Sudanese could read it. And it took a long time to get it translated. The publisher was very difficult about this subject. It took a long time, but yani, I am so happy, alhamdulillah, that there is a translation that the Sudanese can read. And when we started talking about a translation, and I was talking to the translator, I said to him, I do not want any money from this. Whatever income, whatever money there is from this book, you keep it. I don't care. I only want the book to be available in Arabic for Sudanese people to read. And I don't care about anything else. Just translate it very well and make it available. And then I signed away all of my rights. I have no rights to the Arabic translation, and this is fine. This is absolutely perfect, because my intention, my hope, was that Sudanese people would read it. When I began studying the Sudan, I'll tell you an interesting story. I went to Sudan for the first time in 1981. And this was a very good time, 1981, to be in the Sudan. I remember loving being in Khartoum. It was a beautiful place. I was walking along the Corniche. Everything was open, and bookstores and cafes. It was a lovely time to be in Khartoum. And I wanted to travel in Sudan, and I had a decision. I could go east to the Bahr al-Ahmar and go to Port Sudan and Sawakin, or I could go west to Kordofan and Darfur. And I didn't know which direction to go. So this was a problem for me. So I went to Kosti, and I was in Kosti for a while. And in Kosti, I met someone from the family of El Hellu. And he was a merchant in Kosti at the time. Well, I don't remember his name. I just remember he was one of the Hellu family. And we were talking, and I said to him, I have a question, a dilemma. I don't know if I should go west or I should go east. And he said, well, if you go east, it will be more comfortable. But if you go west, you will learn more. So I went west. And I took the train to Lobeid, and I spent maybe 2 weeks there with a family named النيل. They own the إجزخانة صيدلية النيل في لوبيد. And they had a wedding. I stayed with the Neil family for a long time. They were from the Ja'aliyin. Their family had been Jalaba much earlier. And then after staying with the family, I went on to Jabal Mara and spent, several weeks in the region of Jabal Mara before coming back to El Obeid and then Khartoum. And when I finally returned to Khartoum in 1981, I knew this was the place I was in love with. I loved the Sudan, I loved the people, and there was so much that I wanted to understand. The country was so interesting to me. And I had only seen part of it, but I knew this is what I wanted to spend the rest of my life trying to study. I was very surprised when I was reading the historical literature, because everything seemed to be written from the Western perspective. من ناحية الإنجليزية. There is Ahmed Abu Shok. Well, I am very happy to see him because he was my closest friend in Sudan, and I did not know if he would be present for this meeting. So I am very, very happy. When I met Ahmed Abu Shok, he was a student at Khartoum University, and he gave me so much help as my research assistant, and also his friend Noir Sheikh Mahjoub, who is now, of course, his wife, Noir Sheikh Mahjoub. And of course, he is now Dr. Ustez Ahmed, and my very close friend still. So I have to say, when I see his face, I could not have done this study or this book without the assistance of Ahmed. I owe him and Noir so much thanks. And of course, he is now, I am so proud, he's become the greatest historian of the Sudan. And I think our friends El-Gadal and Mohammed Ibrahim Abu Salim, they would be so proud of Ahmed Abu Shok if they could see what he is doing right now. Now, what struck me as interesting was so much history was from the perspective of the English. And when I read about Omdurman, it all had to do, there were a lot of stories about Khordun. And I was not interested in Khordun. I wanted to know, what did the Sudanese people think about Omdurman? How do we understand Omdurman min nahya al-Sudaniya? And when I started talking to people, I found out that Omdurman was a city of families, and that all of these families were related. And when people would talk about their family, I would find out that members of their family were from many different tribes. And a lot of families had even people from the Maselma in their family. And I came to understand that Omdurman was almost like a giant family, that people were related to each other, and they took responsibility for one another, and they took responsibility for their homes and their neighborhoods. And there was this beautiful story about a city that I was starting to understand when I was living there. And it was very different from what I had been led to believe, because all of the other things that had been written about Omdurman, again, were from the English perspective or the Egyptian perspective, or they were from the political perspective. And I was not interested in those things. I wanted to know about a society, a Sudanese society. that is being born in the events of the Mahdiya. Dr. Holt, Professor Holt, was a wonderful man, and he gave me a lot of help. I took one trip to London and Oxford while I was doing my research. And Professor Holt was a very kind, wonderful man. And he said to me, he said, when I wrote my history of the Mahdi state, Tarikh al-Dawla al-Mahdiya, he said, I wanted to understand the external history, Tarikh al-Kharajiyya, I don't know if the Kharajiyya is the right word, the political history, the administrative history of the Sudan. But he said, you, Robert, you want to understand the internal history. I would say the Tarikh al-Dakhliya or al-Dakhli. You know, the history from the من ناحية اجتماعية واقتصادية وثقافية والعلاقات الاجتماعية, you know, and the العلاقات بين القبائل والأجناس في السودان. And so I was hoping my book would be a companion to Holt's book, that people who read Holt might also read this book as well and have two different perspectives on the Sudan, from the administrative perspective, but also the social perspective. And to hear the voices, Aswat al-Sudaniyin. And this is why I spent so much time interviewing people. You know, when I lived in Sudan, I had a little, a moped, a motor. What do we call these? Vespa motor scooters, yes? It was beautiful. Wallahi, I loved it. It was very, very nice. Every day, I would spend the morning and afternoon at Dar al-Wathaq al-Qawmiya. And I would do my research at Dar al-Wathaq. And Ahmed was there with me, and Dr. Abu Salim, Ali Qarar. And then in the afternoon, I would usually take a little nap. And then after Maghrib, I would get on my little motor scooter and I would go to Wamdrman and spend the evening talking to people. And one person led me to another. First, I met Sayyid Ishaq al-Khalifa al-Sharif, Allah yarhamahu. And Sayyid Ishaq said, you have to meet Muhammad Daoud al-Khalifa, and you have to meet all these other people from the families of al-Hillu and Khalifa Abdullahi. And then I started meeting people from Waduru and Hashamab. Umar Hassan al-Tayyib al-Hashim is a very wonderful man. Wallahi, I love this man. He gave me so much help. And he introduced me to the history of the Hashamab. And every person I met said to me, oh, you have to meet someone else. And so, yani, shwaya, I started meeting so many different people in Omdurman, and every night I would go to a different house and interview someone else. And this was the most valuable research I did, was to talk to people and listen to their stories. I know that Hazifa mentioned, I don't want to forget his name. Oh, sorry, 1 minute. Yes, this was, yes, Abdul Qadir Sharif, I'm sorry, Sharif Abdurrahman al-Najumi. Sharif Abdurrahman al-Najumi, of course, was so important because his father was Amir al-Umara, Abdurrahman al-Najumi, one of the most important men from the Mahdiya. And Sharif was the most wonderful, kind man. And he lived with his family still, and he was over 100 years old. And his family took care of him. And, you know, you think when someone is that old, maybe their mind is not very clear. But we would talk, and I would ask him a question, and he would say, why are you asking me this question? We talked about this 5 weeks ago. Well, he had a better memory than I did. And then one day I asked him, كيف حالك يا سيد الشريف? And he said, والله أنا زعلان. I said, ليه أنت زعلان? He said, أنا زعلان لأن كل أصحابي خرفوا وأنا ما خرفت. I thought this was wonderful. I mean, his mind was so clear and he gave me so much information. So the people of Omdurman were the most important source. Of course, the wathaiq, the Dar al-Wathaiq were very, very important, but I am most grateful and most thankful to the people of Omdurman who opened their homes and told me their stories. Now, I wish I could go back to Omdurman and talk to Sharif al-Najumi, but of course he has died, Allah yarhamuhu. He was very old when I met him. But there were some questions I didn't ask him because I didn't think to ask him. But now I wish I had said to him, you were a child in Omdurman during the Mahdiya. You went to school with the sons of the Mahdi and the sons of the Khalifa Abdullahi and Khalifa Sharif and Khalifa Hillu. You knew all of these people. I want to know, what games did you play as a child? This would be so interesting to know about the life of a child during the Mahdiya when they think Yawm al-Qiyamah is coming very soon. You know, they are living fi akhir zaman. And what was life like as a child? And I wish I had asked him about his life as a child, but I didn't think about that as the time. And by the time I realized this, it was too late. But still, it was such a beautiful experience. And I am so grateful to the Sudanese for giving me their history and allowing me to write it. And I am so happy that the book is available in Arabic. And I hope, and I know that other Sudanese historians will continue this work. Of course, Ustaz Ahmed and other historians after him, and they will continue to contribute to this history of this very important, very, very important city, Sudanese city, African city, Islamic city. And I hope what I've started, other people will continue. So I will stop there. I don't want to take too much time. You all have things to discuss, and if you have any questions for me, ahlan wa sahlan, I would try to answer them. But thank you very much, Al-Akh Hazifa, for inviting me, and I am so happy to meet you. Forza Saida for all of you. كلكم الجماعة. وشكرا.
شكرا كثير Professor Kreimer. We will come back to you again. حذيفة تفضل تواصل.